Okay, welcome back. You're watching NewsX. I'm Rishabh Gulati. Let's jump into what's been happening with Prime Minister Modi's visit in France. I think we're getting a flavor now of where the priority areas, when we say what is the Indian interest and where the priority areas are. We saw this in Australia. We've seen this in America, and now we've seen this in France, and I think we're going to see this in the UAE also. The clear push from India about having defined its priorities is technology, technology, technology. So the Prime Minister, India's Prime Minister, has spoken about space, he's spoken about green hydrogen, he mentioned exactly the same thing. And NewsX, the media partner for the biggest green hydrogen summit that is done for the past 3 years. So I understand why green hydrogen is going. I've interviewed the nodal minister several times on this. AI, everybody is talking about, so that's a bit cliched. Semiconductors. If you've been watching NewsX, you know that we've been discussing, I don't know, if I've been discussing it for I don't know how long, because it's so crucially important. So yes, Foxconn, Vedanta is not working out, but maybe Qualcomm needs to come in, and maybe Foxconn needs to figure out that if they don't want to do a deal with Vedanta, they certainly need to be doing a deal in Gujarat very, very shortly. We talk about future issues. Blue ocean economy, huge deal. The future resources are in the economic zones and beyond. Big tech, space has been discussed about. Macron mentioned space, so did Modi very specifically. Then on the strategic matters, we are of one view when it comes to the Indo-Pacific, says Emmanuel Macron of France. And Narendra Modi, India's Prime Minister, has now officially, in this press statement, recognized the French as a resident power in the Indo-Pacific. This is, of course, the half a dozen or so, almost a dozen or so islands that the French still have in the Indo-Pacific, going down from Indonesia towards the Philippines. Recognizing France as a resident power on these issues, okay? And then, of course, India has made a commitment to help resolve conflicts like Ukraine. So that statement has been inserted in. On the broadcast with us, Ambassador Manju Seth, Asif Dawoodi is with us, General Sudhakarji is still with us, Sanjay Kapoor joining us, Rakhi Bakshi is still with us, and General Parehar joining us on the broadcast. Rakhi, we interrupted you just before as this press statement was beginning. Now that you've heard it, your quick thoughts.
No, in fact, Rishabh, you talked about NewsX partnership. In fact, I was there when you talked about the space partnership also. There's a lot of emphasis. If you saw, even with USA, there is Artemis. Right now, we were talking about Chandrayaan-3, but look at all the, the private players getting into the space sector here in India. So space is opening up and the world is watching. And the big leaders actually are looking at Prime Minister's courage and steps that India is taking forward in this particular sector. In fact, we also heard about ocean governance. So we are talking about blue economy. We're looking at this. This is a new area actually that we are looking at. Talking about strategic partnership. In fact, you have numbered all these points, but let me take it to the natural, cultural, and educational alliances also that Prime Minister talked about. So if you talk culturally, we have Alliance Francois here. We have, the museum expos that we had here. I think there's talk of museum-related partnership that India is and France are going to have. In education, you talked about, he talked about how they are looking at the French interest here. The courage of COVID leadership, Rishabh, that even, in fact, Prime Minister also mentioned, I think that's where the world really started to watch us. And they started to look at this vaccine Matri program where India was really looking at all around the world and giving and offering its vaccine partnership was something that world looked at. And the space, technology, as you said, digital technology, as you said, the startups, as you just watched. I mean, all these areas are areas of development, path to progress. So I think doing away from conflict, doing away from, I mean, in India's case, as it categorically says that does not believe in terrorism, we're looking at peace and this peaceful partnership and the economic cooperation which leads to path of development is what is very, very important.
Okay, I'm going to mention one more takeaway before I get General Sudhakar into this. Okay, do you see, this is what happens when you don't have lobby groups operating in an obvious association, okay? So, we are not discussing human rights, journalistic freedom rights, this right, this issue, that issue, because it would be hypocritical to do so, okay? We have things to sort out and the French have things to sort out as well, and we have to respect each other that we are going to sort them out. We don't have to lecture each other on them. We have robust enough internal mechanisms to figure it out, and certainly That is what was missing, is a lesson in this also. But we are getting a trend here, General Sudhakar, and the trend now is very clear. And it should be obviously clear to all of us. There are now cutting edge areas of a new industrial revolution that is taking place. It's in AI, it's in cloud computing, it's in quantum, it's in space, it's in an untapped area of the... So far, when you talk about the blue ocean economy, we only mean oil. That's all we mean. That's the only thing we know how to extract from the ocean floor. That is going to go. Your rare earths are now going to... 70% of the planet's surface is under the sea. So the future is obviously there. The future is obviously in space. And I think that's a trend line that's now been well established across various countries that PM Modi has visited in the last 1 month. General Sudhakar.
Yeah, Rishabh, very nicely articulated by you. Couldn't have been better. All I would say is that our Honorable Prime Minister has been able to outline our national interests. He's kept the national interest central in his articulations and highlighted the aspects which, as like a global statesman, he has spoken out in favor and highlighted the global South concerns. He has highlighted the common challenges before the world order today. Nobody seems to be talking about the climate change. Nobody seems to be talking about finding out the root cause of the pandemic and preventive actions that one needs to talk. Nobody seems to be talking about bringing a cessation to the ongoing hostility by the diplomacy.
No, but General Sudhakar, here's the thing. No, it's all hypocritical. No, come on. The Ukraine war, everybody knows, including the Ukrainians, perhaps. I mean, look at the chicken and egg game that has just been played here. The Russians invade Ukraine because Ukraine is going to join NATO, and NATO tells Ukraine that you can't join NATO until the Russians leave. Okay. And who is dying? Not the American, not the French, not the Germans. It's the Ukrainians and the Russians. Okay, so it's hypocritical chicken and egg that has been a dolly promise has been handed over to the Ukrainians, and only thing that they've been sent is weapons with a bill. The British were paying back the Americans for the weapons supplied in World War II till the 2000s. And the Ukrainians will be paying back the Americans the $100 billion forever. So it's hypocritical, right? This is the hypocrisy. If you take it out, then you can have a lot more practical conversation, General Sudhakar.
Absolutely, Rishabh. Very well said. And I would say, if I may have to make a value addition to what our Honorable Prime Minister articulated, is perhaps India needs to focus on genomics. And also the energy storage. If we have to become a global power by 2047, there are a couple of issues which we are very often, very frequently highlighting in our mainstream media. But energy storage is one thing, and particularly when we talk about Tesla or electronic vehicle is not enough. Actually, lithium processing is a very tedious, painstaking.
No, and it's a very dirty process. It's an environmentally dirty process. So this is the problem, General Sudhakar. This is exactly. So Greta Thunberg will be talking about farmers in India. She won't be talking about that India has built the world's largest solar power park, and not, I think, of the top 5, the top 5 too are now in India, in the globe. And we've built them in the last 3 years. Why don't you mention that? It's the hypocrisy. Not to say we don't have a problem. Of course, the globe has its problems. Yeah, let's get real in a very practical sense. Let me quickly get in Ambassador Manju Seth before I get in Sanjay ji and General Parihar. Ambassador Seth. So, okay. So now, in this time around, it's more than red carpet. It's literally a banquet in the Louvre and what is it? A fireworks display at the Eiffel Towers, which is what we'll wake up to in the morning. So all the atmospherics are well sorted. There has been no needling and hypocrisy from either sides, and we had the opportunity to do it with them as well. So they haven't done it, and it's a very practical conversation has happened so far. What do you make of it?
Absolutely. I think with France, it's a special relationship always, and further strengthened now with this visit. And it was there on display. It was so special. The Prime Minister of France coming to receive our Prime Minister at the airport. I think from what I recall, this is not another norm.
Yeah, it's unusual. Foreign Minister generally goes, yes.
Yes, and they had this, the sort of the band playing and all when the Prime Minister arrived. So I think they gave a very special treatment and special honor, and all this has been done.
Okay, so we nailed that. So a couple of specifics with you. Okay, officially the Prime Minister calling France a resident power in the Indo-Pacific. Why is this important, ma'am?
It's very important because Indo-Pacific has become important for India. And we know that there is China's assertiveness, its aggressiveness in that region, and it's really not, it's claiming all of Indo-Pacific.
So we are recognizing a French territorial interest and therefore a French direct interest in the Indo-Pacific, not a France sitting in Europe indirect interest.
Absolutely. It is present even in the Indian Ocean, and it's present, it has so many of these overseas territories in the Pacific, Indo-Pacific. So France is a resident power in many ways, and it is, it has got the capabilities of defending and of offering its military hardware.
So there are about 2 million French residents living in these the various French islands that still exist in the region. Okay, Macron saying specifically that we are of one view when it comes to the Indo-Pacific. What does that mean, ma'am?
We are of one view because, as I said, the common enemy or the common should we say, adversary in that area is China. And though China and France have had good relations, but China has been very, very assertive, and it's not, there may be even a problem for freedom of navigation in the Indo-Pacific. So all this is of concern for, and the islands also, for France itself, for French islands in the Indo-Pacific.
Okay.
And for India, of course. And therefore, our views are converging, our interests are converging.
Okay, interests are converging, and for some reasons, there are no other irritations which the British, the Canadians, the Americans, the Germans seems to be obsessed with. They've got some itches in the bottom of their stomachs that they are unable to scratch without having to swallow a bit of pride. Let me quickly get in General Parihar into this. General Parihar, the very pragmatic tone of what has been said. Yes, we've had the sobriquets of the red carpets and all the niceness which has been well established now. I don't think if you wanted to plan a trip and say how can we do more, I don't think you could have thought of anything else. Let's give the equivalent of the Bharat Ratna. Let's have a fireworks display. Let's have dinner at the Louvre. Let's have a special ceremony at the Élysée Palace. Let's send the PM to receive him. I mean, can we think of anything else they could have done?
Definitely not.
Since Narendra Modi doesn't drink champagne and maybe doesn't like the expensive cheese.
Yeah, definitely not. You can't imagine more than this. And it's not only the PM who is going and all of a sudden all this has happened. I must say the Ministry of External Affairs and our diplomats, they would have done a very hard work for at least for a year or two, as I know about the functioning. And they have brought out all the points with so much discussions would have gone with the French counterpart. And the best part of it from our side, the Prime Minister is not speaking as a Prime Minister of India. He is speaking as a global leader. He is addressing a dominating global leader. And what those targets we have set for the next 30 years is definitely not for beneficial for India.
So General Parihar, interesting. Now you can qualify this as just semantics, or you can say that we are looking at 25 years, and both Macron and Modi have mentioned it. Okay, that 25 years from now, India will be at 100 years. Okay, and we are trying to set the next 25 years of our association. Is that just nice diplomacies, nice? It sounds good, or do you really think that they are putting the pen to paper? Okay, that in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, this is where we want to be.
No, definitely. I think it's a long-term strategy what the India and European countries and US, all we are working on it. And the best part of the Indian Prime Minister, our Prime Minister, is that he has brought the ideas of whatever is possible in the future to sustain, like for the energy. You have discussed about lithium, you know about the petroleum products are not going to survive for a very long time. So the hydrogen energies, ethanol combinations, all these things will be the future energy sources. And the blue ocean and the space, these are the things which are going to dominate by, or whether it is industry.
Absolutely, I could not agree more. It is obvious. Just think about it. Okay, it's obvious. Lithium is not the answer. There isn't enough lithium in the world to convert half the world's car to lithium-ion batteries. You can't just physically do it. You'll have to do mining of lithium on an asteroid to be able to do it. And then 90% of it is controlled by China. So that's not the answer. Anybody who thinks that 100 million lithium cars are going to be produced in India is, of course, is completely devoid of reality. if you semiconductors, obviously space is the future, obviously the blue ocean economy is the future, and obviously that's going to be the next 25 years. If you want to be that $20 trillion economy in 25 years, you're going to have to nail all of these, and you're going to need partners along the way. And yes, they're going to sell you some Louis Vuitton bags during that time as well, which we'll be very upset with. Let me quickly get Sanjay Kapoor into this. Sanjay Kapoor, okay, so we've seen Australia. All right, and now in Australia, regardless of the government shifting and the opposition parties coming, there's a belief in India. The same has happened in America. You've gone from Trump to Biden. Now in France, Macron is literally, I don't think he could have thought of anything else in rolling out the red carpet, and it's been a good visit. But is the defense deal is the only takeaway, or do we find something else in it also?
Thank you, Rishabh, for inviting me. Last time when Indian Prime Minister went to France, got a similar red carpet treatment. I was there as a reporter in his entourage, and I think that the French only like to think about defense. They may wrap it up in all kinds of things they keep talking about. They may talk about the Blue Water Navy, and they may talk about the hydrogen, blue hydrogen. They may talk about a lot of things. But in the short term, their defense is at the center of their thinking. Yeah. They're keen to sell 26 Rafale, they want to sell Scorpion, and they want a greater help from India when it comes to Reunion Island. That is where the Indo-Pacific angle comes in. I did not know till recently that Reunion Island also has a very large Hindu population. So there is a natural fit which takes place between the two nations. And the other thing is that France doesn't pontificate. And that is what makes it very easy for the government of India to deal with them, because they don't talk about human rights, they don't talk about anything. Despite the fact that you have France 24 writing a long article on how the Gujarat riots were handled. It has an interview with the Sanjeeva's daughter. Then you also have the European Union Parliament in Strasbourg passing a resolution against the government of India. All that is happening. It's almost like a schizophrenic show that is unfolding. You know, at one level you have criticism, at the other level you have the Prime Minister being feted, celebrated by the French President, who gives him the highest award. So it's all happening at the same time, and I think the French know that. The French know that if they can put it right, then India will buy 26 of their Rafale at a decent price, and also Scorpion, and there'll be more things that they will roll out in the coming days.
Okay, so now, you know, I was discussing this just a day or two ago internally, and I said, look, why do defense deals matter? Because defense deals are the ones that governments sign, okay? Everything else is dependent upon the CEOs actually translating what the MOUs they're committing to, and all of those then is devil in the detail. Easier said than done. But what is being thumped home is that you are going to have government and policy support, and it has to be in the interest of both the countries. The French get a big fat check, no doubt about it, but then they also have to comprehend that there is a lot that they have to do in terms of technology transfer, which so far they've been the most willing to do amongst all the powers that we do defense business with. And that is crucially important. Eventually you want the Rafales being made in India, just like the Mirages were. You want to get the Scorpions made in India, which they are, but you want nuclear technology for them also. Let me get General Parihar into this. General Parihar, a very nice tone has been set for sure. There is a lot of practicality in this, but when it comes to translation, what is important? What is India in it for? I mean, we need the aircraft for sure, we need the submarines for sure, but we need the technology for our country, and we want an association with France. Where have we come forward? Is Solar Alliance and all that, is that good enough?
Yeah, other than the Solar Alliance and Space and Blue, the defense technology has to come to the Indians. We have developed our own infrastructures, but the fact remains there that we are lagging behind in the ultra-modern technology which is available with the European countries and America. We have been engaged with Russia, and you, Rishabh, you know that the Russian technology is not that advanced in all the fields of the weaponry.
Correct.
And particularly with the Ukraine-Russian war, now Russia is not able to maintain its commitment with the India for supply of all those accessories, replacement, maintenance. So obviously the India has to find another way. And the France is the old partner. For more than 30 years, we have been engaged with the France with the Mirage and the Jaguar. All those things have been with us. So and Rafale is the new generation which has come, the 4.5 generation. Our Scorpion, we have already got 12, 10 are still functioning, and now we are getting 3. And with this, we definitely need to develop our own infrastructure. Unless until we get the newest technology, we cannot upgrade them in the future. So Atmanirbhar Bharat, Make in India for the world is only possible when there is a constant flow of technology. And that is the thrust which the Prime Minister Modi has pushed everywhere, like in the US also and now in the France. So it is a very welcome, and the fruits will be seen after a decade or so when you have so many agents, these companies are developed in the India with the various defense corridors. So we will not only be able to transform ourselves with the ultra modern technology built up in the India, but we will be the biggest exporter.
Okay. So let's take an example of that. Okay, let's take an example of that. Okay, if you're building the LCA, okay, for which you need 4 components. All right, you need to have the material science right to build the airframe. You need to have the avionics. You need to have an engine, okay, and you need to then have the weapon systems, right? So now we can build the airframe, we are getting better at the avionics, but we don't make the engine, and we have to just still enhance our weapon system. We are getting there, okay? Talk about electric. Just about, I think, a couple of months ago, I think, what was it, last year, I've forgotten, Reliance, okay, which is the Mukesh Ambani Reliance. Reliance brought out a company which is a UK-based company called Feridian. Now, Feridian is doing R&D on sodium-ion batteries. Sodium-ion is salt, okay? That is the future of battery technology because it can't be lithium. If you want to know how poisonous lithium is to the environment, just have a look at where it's produced in Chile and in Xinjiang. Just just Google search it, okay? So that's not the answer. But if you want to build electric cars, you have to be able to build the batteries, and if you have to build the batteries, either you need to find the lithium or find a better technology. So this is where the technology sphere which we need to get into. Let me quickly jump in and get General Sudhakar back into this. General Sudhakar, us understanding that the critical components which need to be manufactured at the highest levels of technology here in India, when it comes to AI is going to be functioning on supercomputers. The supercomputers need to be functioning on the latest 3, 4, 5 nanometer chipset technologies, which we don't make here in India. So we need to get a lot of these puzzle pieces in play very, very fast, and that's all we seem to be talking about now.
Yeah, but Rishabh, I must compliment you. You're going high-tech now in the discussion. We need to. India needs to think on a plane wherein these mini micro semiconductors have to be developed on a fast-track basis. Otherwise, we'll be left behind. We are miles and many years behind in comparison with the countries which have actually have a cutting-edge technology in this paradigm. Because the future depends on 5 important issues, like you have very rightly summarized. And I would say one of them happens to be semiconductor, and the semiconductor industry, the pitfall that Vedanta and the Foxconn that we have had. I'm sure a lot of things are happening in the backdoor diplomacy.
I'm sure there's a lot of pressure from China. I'm sure there's a lot of pressure from America for them not to do it. I'm sure the Taiwanese expect more from us diplomatically and strategically.
I totally agree with you.
But I think Rajiv Chandrasekhar has said it. You can't bet against India. And I think that deal will go through. It will happen in Gujarat. It will happen. Hook or crook is going to take place.
Absolutely. I'm totally with you. But the turning point will come about when we make the ease of operation or ease of doing business in India has to be further actually relaxed to a large an extent, whether it is the land acquisition mode or the electricity or the capital assets acquisition. A lot of things have to be
in critical areas. Okay, because everything's like in defense. I want you to just imagine when we say core change, when you hit a different orbit literally means that ISRO is earning money for your foreign exchequer. That the Indian taxpayer is being subsidized because foreign companies are using ISRO to launch into space, okay? And every space launch is hundreds of thousands of dollars per these mini satellites. Think about it when you start selling the LCAs, right? The Indian defense industrial complex will be earning funds. Right now, after petrol, defense is the biggest expenditure of foreign reserves. You will be earning foreign reserves. You have a complete shift. Okay, the last has to be energy because petroleum is your biggest drain on the exchequer. If you become energy independent, Imagine if those hundreds of billions of dollars are not being sent to the Saudis and are being spent in this country. You're in a different orbit. The Americans are 100% energy independent, okay? Now, you're going to do that through solar, but you're going to do it through ethanol. You're going to do it through green hydrogen, and green hydrogen is a big bet, okay? Big bet, which is being done over here. But if you want to do it through solar, you have to make the photovoltaics here. So there are simple things. If you saw the last GST meeting, okay, they have raised GST on the saste wale lighters which you buy from a pan shop, okay, because that's a joke, no. The Chinese dump them in India. Now the lighter though we can make, no. So let's make it, no. Just like the agarbattis they were dumping in India. So let me quickly get Ambassador Manju Seth into this conversation. Ambassador Manju Seth, you know, this needs to happen fast. It can't happen 10 years from now. It needs to happen in a few months. It needs to happen next year, okay. So how do we make it happen faster? And the answer is not just ease of doing business. It's also geopolitical. As I mentioned, if Foxconn is coming to India, they have to think about whether we are giving Taiwan enough diplomatic support or not, and what they can leverage out of us. The Chinese will be doing every trick in the book to get them not to come. The Americans want them to be making in America, not necessarily in India, maybe a little bit in India, but mostly in America. So there are lots of calculations here. How do we wiggle it out in between?
Absolutely. You really hit the nail on the head, actually, Rishabh. That's exactly what is happening. The geopolitical and the background pulls and pressures on companies to not go into a particular country, to not manufacture there. I think they're very strong, and it's amazing that it was announced and then they have withdrawn, So it was something which is, was quite unexpected. But I'm sure it will happen. And yes, there will be some more negotiations, some more give and take, I'm sure, and some pressure from the governments and from the the backers, I should say.
No, and some commitment from us on Taiwan. I think it's about time we did something serious on it.
Yeah, I think also because, especially in the light of what's happening along our border, we also need to be a little more assertive in the way we handle our neighbor. Let me put it that way. And I think we have we are beginning to do it. But I think a lot more. Okay,
Ambassador Manju Seth, since you spent your life in diplomacy, let me point out for our people watching this. Okay, so for the better part since the 1970s, okay, India was a Damocles sword was put over its head, and it is called CTBT. Okay. Now, 5 countries who are nuclear powers decide that nobody else should become a nuclear power. So they have something called the NPT and the CTBT. And they want India to sign the CTBT, because if you can't test a bomb, you can't demonstrate a capacity to build a bomb, right? So the entire nuclear regime, the NSG, that was dominated by the players who were first of the starting block. Now I want you to think about space. Eventually we are going to put up so many satellites. I mean, Musk himself is going to put up 40,000, then Airtel also wants to compete, then Jio also wants to compete. Now they're talking about hundreds of thousands of satellites. Eventually, even though space is big, once you start putting millions of near-Earth satellites, every orbit will be commercially contested, if not strategically contested. Right now, it's free. So you will have a new space regime, which is what the Artemis Accords infrastructure is supposed to put in. Who gets access to which bandwidth of space, which orbit of space, for how long, at what cost? Somebody will have to be setting that up. Now, this time, you want to be sitting on the table when it's formulated, not be knocking on the door 30 years later. So this is a crucial thing. You talk about blue ocean economy. It is logical, okay, that since we can't mine asteroids, the future is going to be in the oceans, where I just mentioned so far you only get oil, but it will be rare earths, it will be gold, it will be other things very shortly. So Ambassador Manju said, to be in the front line of the critical areas of defining this future architecture, how important is India going to have to get that right?
India is, of course, has to, on its own. As we see, we are going ahead. We are emerging, and I think, as Prime Minister said, we need to be a developed nation very soon. But at the same time, we have to have our friends on our side, because all said and done, the really big powers are still going to be able, because the Artemis Accords, all these things that are happening are again initiatives by the developed world.
Yeah.
We need to be part of these initiatives and be slightly, should I say, assertive in all that. We've done something in the solar. It was our sort of initiative in the Solar Alliance, and we are getting there. But I think to be really, and now space, as you said, is going to be the next place of contestation. The blue economy, the oceans are going to be the next place of contestation. There'll be regulations for that as well, of harnessing the blue economy. So I think all these issues, India is getting there, but we need to, as you mentioned, move a little faster on everything.
Yeah, Gati Shakti is the word these days. Gati Shakti is the word these days, okay? And that's what really matters. Sanjay ji, in the end, we are all in the same boat called India, and after that, we are all in the same boat called the Earth. So there are certain things we have to get it right. India is going to be developed when its per capita GDP is in a different orbit. For that, our GDP will have to go into a different orbit, and 5 trillion ain't going to hack it, 20 trillion ain't going to hack it, it's going to have to be much larger. But we only have a 2-3 decade window, because we have to generate 200-300 million jobs in the next 2-3 decades. It's a tall order to get all of this right very quickly. Now, what is the leap of faith and imagination that we will have to take?
Rishabh, I'm sorry to disappoint everybody here. I mean, there's a lot of chest thumping that I can see. I think we've done rather badly in the last few years, despite whatever may have happened. COVID was a big setback. But during that time, if you look at the total GDP of US, it galloped to $25 billion. China was just a little far behind. But we didn't grow at all. I mean, we just added about $0.54 trillion in our overall kitty. The job creation is also minimal. But, the entire strategy is to somehow get a few things right, get the support of the US behind us. That is why, if you look at it, there's been a shift in the production mix that is happening with Apple. They have moved their plant to India with making about 10 million iPhones here. More are going to come in. But we need to improve our quality. We need to improve a whole lot of things. I mean, if we need to compete with China, we need to figure out how to beat them in terms of quality, in terms of efficiency. Until that time it happens, nobody is going to shift the industry.
Yeah, sure.
The reason why you look at it, how Mr. Blinken has had 2 conversations with Wang Yi, the Chinese senior French foreign policy official now, who is formerly the foreign minister, and also Yellen makes a trip to Beijing. It's only because the CEOs of their respective economies have come to realize that there is nothing that you can do without China. They cannot.
No, but obviously not. We can't wish it away. It's not like the second largest economy with 1.4 billion people is going to vanish tomorrow, right? It's not going to vanish tomorrow. So it's going to be there.
No, it's not going to vanish.
So it's going to be an emerging reality. So what can then we do, because it's urgent? Okay, Gati Shakti should be taken exactly what it is. It's urgent. We need to do it in the next decade or 2. Otherwise, it's never going to happen.
We need to improve our skill set. That is very important. We need to get a whole lot of things right, which is happening in the pockets in different parts of India. But it has to be replicated in far larger geography than what's happening now. And that is where I think the challenge lies.
We've been so bad at the game, Rakhi, of real politics. We seem to be, it's like we just woke up yesterday. Now, I'll give you an example, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Why is Vijay Mallya and Siddharth chilling in London? How do they manage to do that? They manage to do that because all their assets are operating out of British overseas territories. The British know that. So anytime a European bank puts a lien on Vijay Mallya's house and threatens to take it over, Siddharth flies down and suddenly 40 million pounds appear from nowhere. Because the British have mastered this game, that the world's richest, biggest companies don't pay taxes and they have offshore havens. And that's all of them, including the ones that are, household names for us. So now we are, after having seen Singapore, Hong Kong, Virgin Island, this island, that island, Guernsey, this, that, now we are creating Gift City as an example. It's like we've been living blind for all these years, Rakhi, on how the world really works.
But the concerns are very much there, Rishabh. I mean, whenever the Prime Minister, talk about these men who have fled, he always talks about as to how to bring them back. In fact, I saw that in G20, in one of the meetings, it was really taken up in a very big scale, where they talked about all the mechanisms, and all the world leaders that were there in that meeting and there was this thought as to how to build that mechanism where everyone supports. I mean, there is a cover that is created as to how to deal with this. So the concerns are very serious, I must say. And I think I've observed that in that meeting.
My point is different. My point is you needed to understand that the British nailed it. That's how their empire continued. 70% of the world's offshore transactions, to the tune of potentially trillions of dollars. Nobody knows their exact figure. Okay, you can guess it from Mossack Fonseca and all those. Is still controlled in British overseas territories. How do you think the British manufacture nothing now? They manufacture nothing. Think of a British product which you recently bought. Okay, they manufacture nothing. So how do they still remain a developed country? Is because they control the world's finances. Even the Americans struggle with the British and the Swiss on these matters. If you think you are struggling with black money guys in Switzerland and British overseas territories, the Americans struggle with them also. So Rakhi, okay, now we've got Gift City. Now we are saying come and build your universities here. But they are still saying that, oh, why don't you come and live here for 5 years? So the smarter ones can go to France instead of going to the UK. This is a real thing. It's a real issue.
Yes, maybe, and you've really looked at it, I mean, as was said that, and I didn't know that, but I think your own experience tells us that, how at this stage, when I would also bring in here India's whole point of focus here, when Amrit Kal is converted into Kartavya Kal, the Vision India 2047. So India understands that. I mean, talk about Britain, yes, what you said, I would agree with that. But how it is trying to focus on areas of focus, I would say. So not only education, but digital education, partnerships of that kind, which takes, our talent ahead and also takes some of it from there to our country. So Kartavya Kal is looking at, all these areas that we just listened to, talked about, whether it's startup, education, high technology, blue economy, all these things we've talked about. But I am saying that there is a focus as far as India is concerned to take that path ahead and create that.
No, so we are nailing it on several areas. UPI, great example, okay, of nailing it, of creating an architecture. I want you to think about it. How many millions of UPI payments being made every day? It takes seconds. It's never down. The servers don't hang. We have nailed it. RuPay is going to be the future, taking on the big payment giants. Not easy.